Greetings and welcome to the Mount Rushmore podcast. My name is Jeff, and I'm joined as always by my good friends Richard.
Hello.
And my good friend Michael.
Howdy.
These guys debate, deliberate, discuss, digest the most ubiquitous aspects of many topics. And this time around, it is the Mount Rushmore of alternate. It is the Mount Rushmore of musicians' alternate personas. Did I get it right?
Yeah, you nailed it.
Okay.
Mhm.
Fucking nailed it, Jeff.
On the
Good
third
job.
try. Who chose it?
This was my choice, and I chose this because, as I am wont to do, Emily and I have this huge playlist of music videos that we just keep adding things to over the last few years. And every once in a while, a Friday or a Saturday night, we'll have a few drinks and we'll put on some music videos. And music videos are great to just have fun and drink to and hang out to, because you don't have to pay too much attention. You're watching it, you're listening to music, and it's over in 3 to 7 minutes. So any particular like dog walking that needs to happen or going to bed things that need to happen, you're just like, I'm out of here. I don't need to pay attention all that much. But then you're just like, oh my God, I'm sucked into this Hammer video from 1991. It's like, do we need to watch the 14-minute Too Legit to Quit MC Hammer video? And you're like, I think I do. I think I need to see all of it with like with just all of everybody that's involved. You see all the superstar athletes and just the random assortment of celebrities and folks. David Faustino is in it, so you're just like, oh my God, I got to see.
Wow.
Whatever this is, Danny Glover and who is the King of Soul?
Aretha Franklin?
No, I feel good.
James Brown?
James Brown is
yeah.
in. Oh, the greatest thing about that video, and I'm really off on a tangent because Hammer MC
Yeah,
Hammer
I'm wondering
doesn't
how you
have
were
really
getting back to this. Yeah.
MC Hammer doesn't really have an alternate persona per se, unless you count his slight name change. The entire premise of the video is that Hammer has disappeared and everybody wants Hammer back, and then James Brown convinces him that he has to dethrone, quote, the gloved one, unquote, and it's all about like the destruction of Michael Jackson via pyrotechnics and dancing, and Hammer being very, very sweaty, and it's very exciting. It's an incredible 14-minute video. And Capitol Records is very prominent, and like the producers and people that own Capitol Records are very prominent. It's a very strange. The first like 4 minutes leading up to when they actually start singing is like wild, and then you get into like fireballs and like it's insane. But I put a music video on there recently that had one of the performers that we're going to talk about, and it made me think like, oh my God, what are the other types of like people that have decided to choose an alternate persona within the musical realm that they are going to enact, perform, put an album out as, whatever. There's just so many different aspects of musical performance that I think are quite interesting when you're just like, oh yeah, I'm Bob Smith, and Bob Dylan goes out there and puts out an album, and he's maybe I'm forgetting some random Bob Dylan album where he was I don't know, a rapper or whatever, but like for the most part he's Bob Dylan, but then other people have chosen another path.
Yeah. Awesome. Fun topic. Okay, cool. So Michael chose it, so Richard leads off.
All right. So my first choice is XTC. What a shock. What a shock. I am
as CTX.
Yes, as XXXTC. No, and I'm not going with the Dukes of Stratosphere because we have discussed that, I think, ad nauseum on the show, and don't need to really revisit that. I am going to be discussing their release as the Three Wise Men, billed as, I'm just looking this up right now, what year this came out. Hold on 1 second. We're going to edit all this out, right?
Sure.
No, we're not going to edit this out.
Oh, well, Richard
My
searches. I think it's interesting that we assume that whatever we see of that artist to begin with is their actual persona, is something that is close to who they are. as opposed to a put on, to begin with. So,
right, that's true. There is no such thing as a real persona.
Yeah, it's could be that which is manufactured,
Sure.
so already to begin with. So what were we going to say?
So I was going to say, so this came out in 1983. The pseudonym came together. The three members of the band released the song as the band name The Three Wise Men. And the song's called "Thanks for Christmas."
Oh,
which
I love that song.
Yeah, a song that comes up, on many popular 80s Christmas compilations. And it was a song that was is credited to the writing team of Caspiar, Melchior, and Balthazar. So they were really going all in with the Three Wise Men theme. It was a song that Andy Partridge had written, and didn't really feel like it made sense for them to come out with a Christmas song, but wanted to do something with the song. So the original thought was they were going to have this group of secretaries from Virgin Records, which was their record label at the time. And they were going to get them to sing the song, and all of them were named Mary. And so they were going to release the album as the Virgin Marys.
Nice.
Singing "Thanks for Christmas." Virgin Records apparently thought that was too blasphemous. I mean, later they put out "Dear God," so I don't know how much room they got to talk about that. But so Andy Partridge decided, well, we just have the band do it. We'll put it out as we won't put it out as an XCC album. We'll call it The Three Wise Men. We'll kind of keep our identities hidden. It was kind of a dry run for the Dukes of Stratosphere in terms of, what would happen if we put out this album, or this song at least, that was not with our name. And it turns out it really didn't do anything commercially, although there was a bit of mystery in terms of who the members of the band were. There was a theory going around at the time in '83 for a while that it was Phil Collins playing drums and singing on it. It was not. But I love this idea of making a one-off project that you feel like, okay, if we put this out as XCC, everyone's going to think, well, this is kind of weird that they're putting out a Christmas album, a Christmas song. It's going to come off as kind of like this weird money grab. It's going to, how does that fit with the whole persona that they've kind of created as a band? And suddenly you're comparing this song to other songs that they've done. You're comparing it to full-fledged albums, stuff that they put a lot of pride and work into. And that's not the point of this. It's just supposed to be kind of this goofy Christmas song. And the B-side to it, by the way, is the song called "Countdown to Christmas," which is like this sort of white boy funk rap sort of thing, which is something XTC should never do. and is proven by that song. It is the dredges of XTC. But it's okay, because if you're doing that as the Three Wise Men, and it's just this goofy kind of gritty polity sounding white boy funk, that's okay. It's just goofy. But if they were to put that out as XTC, everyone would have gone, oh wow, what is XTC doing goofing around with funk? And this is, oh boy, I don't know about this. So I like this idea that putting out a song, or putting out an EP, or whatever, an album, whatever it happens to be, it with a pseudonym kind of protects the band, or protects the artist from a lot of the comparisons to themselves.
I find it interesting, because when we think of what motivates an artist to create another character and then provide that character with songs and a story and stuff like that, in this case it almost seems like they wrote a song that was out of character and created these other identities that wouldn't seem untoward to be performing this song.
I mean, it's the litany of goofy Christmas songs that have come out before. It kind of, and XCC being this band that was kind of seen as, I think, they made very kind of serious sort of albums. Very, very kind of button, stiff upper lip sort of stuff. So the idea that this gave them the freedom to be able to do something kind of just goofy and Christmassy and just didn't matter, I think was great.
I wonder if it seems like the holiday single is something that has a bigger footprint in the UK. And I don't know if it's the government run media and radio that makes that even more focused and on point, but it does seem like something that a group would have an even greater motivation to do in the UK than in the US. It's almost a contest that everybody's got to take part in.
Yeah, I agree. I think that Christmas in general, I think any given artist can put out a particular Christmas type album or single or whatever, and everyone's just gonna be like, okay, I understand why you wanted to do that. It's Christmas. It's fun. We did probably 3 years ago now, 4 years ago, we had like our Mount Rushmore of like maybe it was like indie Christmas songs, or I can't remember the exact title, but it was kind of like Christmas songs done by different artists or whatever. And that it runs the gamut, and it's just kind of like, okay, you have such a permission slip by the music industry to do this. I love the fact that XCC went that extra mile and created a whole new band out of it. I think that's where you're like, trying to really push the envelope of Christmas music is like a very loaded statement, but like that the idea of it, I think, is very interesting.
I'm interested to know whether that was a legal end run, or if they could not even release product under a certain, if that would have. I think sometimes people take on another identity. We know of a certain artist who took on another identity to get around a relationship with a record label. So
sure, yeah, I don't think that was the case, because they released it on the same label. But it is interesting that you bring up the UK Christmas #1 single, and you're right. The idea of putting out a Christmas song specifically for trying to get to the top of the charts is something that is very British. That goes back to when Slade came out with Merry Christmas Everybody in '73, and Wizard came out with I Wish It Could Be Christmas Every Day at the same time, and those two songs fighting for the #1 song on Christmas weekend. And that kind of started this tradition of the biggest #1 of the year being whatever the #1 happened to be on Christmas. Which is not something we have in the United States. The Christmas #1 is just not it's just not something that we think about. But it's absolutely 100% this big deal. You can go to William Hill bookie and make a bet on what song is going to be the #1 on Christmas. There have been trends like in 2009 of basically a bunch of fans were able to game the system and get Killing in the Name by Rage Against the Machine bumped up to the #1 spot.
Wow.
So there's been all sorts of like interesting stories about this Christmas #1. So if you're a British band, this idea of doing a Christmas single is not as unusual as I think it would be if you're an American band.
Yeah. Interesting stuff. Okay. All right. Winfield, what is your first choice?
My first choice is I'm going to go with the artist that made me think of this topic in the first place, and that is Humpty Hump, the alternate persona of Shock G, who is the alternate persona of Gregory Jacobs, who unfortunately passed away just about a month ago from the rap group Digital Underground. And Humpty Hump is, in particular, a very clownish character. The band itself isn't a very ultra serious rap group, I guess. I don't know if I identify him as serious, but this persona within the group is someone who can take things to a more naturally comedic level with his kind of exaggerated way of singing. He's a very, as I said before, kind of clownish. He would wear like Groucho Marx glasses. And so he's this very comedic performance within like someone that has like so many other different performances within the group too. Like Humpty Hump performed as Rackadelic, and he has the Piano Man, and he has like all these different personalities as a performer that kind of impact the production of music, or kind of on stage things, or different voices within the rap group. But like Humpty Hump is this one that just like, maybe the song was just better. Maybe it just appealed to a wider audience. But like the Humpty Dance was just this song that is just so, it enabled this personality to kind of take over and be the most kind of dominant voice on that record and on that album. And they didn't do a ton of songs with Humpty Hump. He sang on a song called All Around the World as well, which was kind of like a hit single for a terrible movie.
Was that Nothing But Trouble? Was it?
That is the the Dan Aykroyd starring Nothing But Trouble, where his nose looks like a penis.
Yeah.
You know, the things that you want to be remembered for. But he was the first person that I thought of. He was the one that I thought was like, oh, this is a persona that kind of even overtook what should be like the baseline persona as a rapper, like Shock G. And maybe I'm coming at it from someone that's not as educated, but I don't think of Shock G as this person. I think of Humpty Hump as the person. I think that's an interesting thing when you create a clown character, create someone to be like a comedic relief, and then they just take over. Like I can imagine something like like Jerry Lewis creating like if he's mostly known as what, like the Nutty Professor, and Flubber and whatever, when like he's probably in so many more characters, but like the goofiest, silliest thing is kind of the thing that he's remembered for.
Humpty Hump is the Steve Urkel of 90s rap.
Yeah, that's a kind of. There you go.
I guess Andrew Dice Clay had a very broad performance. He had different roles that he did on stage, but Dice Man was that thing that broke through. And so I can kind of see that it's almost his Chaplin's Tramp or Paul Rubin's Pee-wee character, that thing that just becomes so ubiquitous.
Yeah, that's funny. Like, wow, to think of Pee-wee Herman as a character, like he hasn't really performed as anything else. You know, he has a couple of other roles that he's done. Wow, that's a really interesting comparison that I'm just sitting here thinking of now. You know, I remember him being in like the original Buffy the Vampire Slayer movie, and he had a very tiny performance in Batman Returns as the Penguin's father. And like, but Pee-wee Herman, or Paul Rubens, is Pee-wee Herman. That is
All right, Manfredi, what's the second one?
My second choice is Damon Albarn as 2D from the band The Gorillaz.
Also on my list.
I kind of wondered if it was going to be on your list. Yeah. I love the concept of Gorillaz. I love how much depth that him and Jamie Hewlett, who's kind of the visual artist in charge of the band, have put into this whole Gorillaz world. You know, you've got this idea of 2D basically being the almost stereotypical kind of good looking, good singer, kind of dumb, kind of a not all there, kind of, they call him a blank slate of paper where his brain should be, is kind of the concept behind the character. And what I love about Gorillaz and about 2D and about Damon Albarn doing this is that he originally didn't want to do the voice for 2D. When they were coming up with the concept, they started auditioning other singers to be the voice of 2D. And it wasn't until they got through some auditions and had seen some people they thought might work, might not work, that he realized, no, wait a second, I'm the only. Well, you okay there, Jeff?
Yeah, somebody's got these like incendiary bombs. I got to get my dog out. He's freaking out. I'm sorry.
No problem.
A huge explosion.
Jeff recording live from Baghdad.
Sorry.
You know, when the ghosts take over next door, you know you're in trouble. When they're blowing up big bags, and it's Memorial Day evening. Come on, guys.
It doesn't. I don't know where they get these huge, or where they're blowing them up. But sorry,
we get fireworks every night here.
Do you?
I don't understand.
Okay.
I don't understand.
I want to say, spend the money on your lawn. Like,
yeah.
Come on.
Yeah. Okay. No kidding. Sorry. Okay. So no problem. So one of the things I love about 2D and Gorillaz is the fact that Damon Albarn didn't necessarily want to be the voice of 2D. When him and Jamie Hewitt came up with the concept, they actually auditioned other singers to do the voice of 2D. And it wasn't until they had sort of come up with gone through some auditions, heard some people, that Damon Albarn said, no, wait a second. This is the character I created. It's not coming out right. I should really just do the voice. And I love the idea that by creating this persona, he was able to create something that was separate from what you would think of a Damon Albarn solo project sounding like. I mean, Gorillaz really sounds nothing like anything that Blur had done.
Yeah. I think what is impressive about this sort of project is it felt so complete from the beginning. I think
right.
that Jamie Hewlett, most famous for Tank Girl, a very weird comic book out of Australia, and a terribly adapted movie that wasn't very good. But the idea that you're not only writing music as in a different style that sounds so different from Blur, you're adding all these different sorts of hip hop influences, and that his voice sounds different from Damon to a certain extent. He's singing in a different style, but then visually, the way it was put out is just everything is so, as a cartoon, and as they performed, like in person, they'd perform behind screens. They'd often put up the entire pretense of this band that was touring, that was these cartoon people that exist in this reality. The completeness of it is
the world building.
The world building is just was just key, and just it sells it. And at this point, Gorillaz have put out more albums than Blur has since they've debuted, and I think it probably led to feeling like a more interesting project, and a more I can devote myself into this character more than I necessarily need to with Blur, which I think is quite interesting.
Yeah, I think it kind of does solve the problem of, because musically, Gorillaz is, yes, there are other collaborators who help out, but it is essentially a Damon Albarn kind of solo project, him doing pretty much everything. And so I wonder if there is some sort of reluctance to put yourself out there as, look, I'm the guy who is doing everything, like the Paul McCartney solo album type model. So I wonder if there's a thought about mitigating that by creating all of these different cartoon personas that are part of this quote unquote band. So it doesn't have to feel like it's just Damon Albarn out there doing everything himself.
Man, I think that's really fascinating. I think one of the things that I find so interesting about it is its precedents are something like the Archies. or the not the Bugaloos. I'm sure like weird animated kid shows and
the
things.
Banana Splits.
Yeah, it just seems like
sure. When there's a giant singing shark, you kind of I'm not that interested.
Yeah, and for it to succeed in a way.
Definitely in terms of the US, more Feel Good Inc. went to top 20, which Blur never did. So this idea of this kind of goofy kind of hybrid animation music project wound up becoming the most successful thing commercially he's ever done. I think it's just fascinating.
Yeah. I guess like something I can kind of associate it to is a band like Garbage. It's like here are all these people who were successful producers and who decided let's put out some garbage that we can get on MTV that people will love. Like we know how to make the good stuff. Let's make this crap and be famous. Like I think Cameo also did that. Cameo had like a jazz fusion background or something.
Oh, really?
Then they decided let's do something called, I don't know, we'll get funny haircuts and call it Word Up. And these jazz guys suddenly were on MTV. So they made a cartoon version of themselves.
Well, which came first? Was it the jazz? Was it the
they were all working?
Was it the funk or was it the codpiece? Which came first?
I
does
think
the codpiece lead to funk, or does funk lead to the codpiece?
Well, like Chic or other musicians who evolved out of jazz, or actually they evolved out of a musical environment where there weren't that many labels, where we just played music and
right.
We popped around into whatever genre that we were really interested in, but not as literally as the Gorillaz did they create a cartoon version of their musical identity. So
right.
I think there's just kind of this, with all of these personas, there's just this constant need to try something new and to not necessarily tag it as yourself, to hang your hat on a different name, a different persona, a different thing, to try this music out and be like, if it fails, that was just this other guy.
Yeah.
I think there is a freedom in it, but I think there's a security in it too, that you can just write it off as something that belongs to someone else because I've created somebody else. And if it fails, it's this other person. I was just trying something else. And sometimes you never like recover from it, but sometimes you're just like, oh, this is this, like with Damon Albarn, with Blur, is like, oh, this other thing that I created is more popular than this thing that I spent the last like 15 years doing. So that's kind of fucked up. Uh-oh.
Right.
Yeah. I remember reading that Avon products, Avon was an offshoot of a company that sold books. They sold books door to door. And if you bought a book, you'd get this little vial of perfume. And people liked the perfume so much they stopped wanting to buy the book. They would ask these ladies, can you just bring me some of that great perfume? So they started, it's they got out of the horse business and got to the cart business. I imagine artists like Damon Albarn probably had 5-6 different bands before Blur, and that one landed, and he probably wouldn't even be able to tell you why. And he'd probably say, yeah, I was used to having a different band every year before this one got successful. So yeah, this cartoon thing was just another flight of fancy.
I mean, I think it also helps that the illustrations are good too. Like Jamie Hewlett as part of like this band, like he's a very interesting cartoonist and comic book artist. He's like visually, he's very distinct from anything else you kind of generally see. I think there's definitely a kind of more, I hate to use the word street, but like there's a very graffiti aesthetic to his exaggerated kind of characters. And I think that I think it leads to something very interesting that doesn't feel very corporate. So it doesn't feel like it's coming out of a Disney universe or Warner Brothers universe or whatever. It feels something that is like, oh, these feel like real things that real people are doing versus something that's been generated within a collective or someone like getting a stamp of approval and being like, okay, well, 2D looks like this, but he should really look a little bit more like this. His eyes are all black and that's weird. So why don't we lighten up the eyes and put a nice blue in there? And, whatever it is, there's something that these characters of like kind of the 4 main gorillas look different than anything that you see. And so they have an authenticity that I think doesn't exist when you're just looking at like, oh, well, that's Lola Bunny. And you're like, all right, I don't give a shit. That doesn't exist anywhere else. That's, whatever.
Good Lord. They seem like, for me, an offshoot of the illustrations that I would see on a hardcore poster or a zine in the 80s or 90s. Like some kid who started off drawing characters like you would see in Mad Magazine, but then they started giving them spike collars and nose piercings and things like that, and then they became the gorillas. So interesting. If you hear any explosions,
that's just us being excited.
That's us blowing up.
That's Jeff's alter ego as Explosion Man.
Yeah.
He just randomly like blows up paper bags, then pops them to see if anybody's still listening.
Who I am is going.
He is a Muppet.
I'm a Muppet. Yeah. Harry the.
He's going to start throwing fish next.
If you see early Jim Henson commercials for coffee or bread or whatever, it's always a Muppet blowing up another Muppet,
murdering somebody. It's always like, try this coffee. No, fuck you. It just shoots you. It's weird. It's great.
It was like TikTok before TikTok. Like 5 second. I want a 5-second commercial. Okay. There's a Muppet going to die at the end of it. Okay, so it's halftime. It's halftime, and it's time for us to take on all our alternative identities. Bonsoir, my name is Pierre. I am this French podcast host who is going to implore you to download, rate, and review of the best episodes of the podcast. All right, enough of that. I'm going to pass the torch to Michael. Michael, what is your alternate identity?
Hey, my alternate persona is Richard.
What?
Oh, wow.
Nobody wants that. I don't even want that as my main persona. Much less an alternate one.
So let me tell you about how I understand. I'm trying to think of what are the exact opposite things that Michael understands. Let me tell you how I understand chords and how great I am at all these different things. Bowling, having children that love him,
sports,
sports watching.
Richard, I'm
not even going to give you sports. I'm going to give you. You're really good at watching sports.
That's good. Well, can we accept cornhole as a sport? Because you'll be good at cornholing if you take on. I
don't know, Richard. Are you going to talk about how great you are at like cornhole? Because I don't remember that. The only sport I know that I'm better than you at is corner push-ups.
I still have the world record at that. So
there is no way you have the world record at corner push-ups. I'm pretty sure it's me.
Pretty sure it came up in my feed.
Okay, well, we're back, and since Michael also had Damon Albarn, he'll do his third choice first.
Okay, my third choice is MacPheesto. Or maybe even The Fly. When Bono decided that only after about 10, 11 years, he is going to just go all in on like the indulgent thought process of what it is to be a rock star. With the band U2, obviously, Bono with U2. And he created a couple of... U2 is very interesting as a band, where only after a decade of touring and a decade of being a band, they became the biggest thing in the world, and they continue to be the biggest thing in the world. And then they capitalized on that by just saying like, okay, well, if we're going to be the biggest band in the world, we might as well be it. And we might as well put out the biggest tour. And they did this Zoo TV tour. In 1991 through like 1993, they toured for like 2 years straight with these giant monitors, and giant stage performances. And within that, they would generally play like a very similar set going through, or they change it slightly. But Bono would come out within these, and he'd create these like on-stage personas. And one was like MacPheesto, and he which was kind of dressed up as, very rock and roll and leather jacket, and almost kind of would try to be kind of like the devil, of course. And then he'd have another one called like The Fly with these big bug glasses that he hasn't seemed to have gotten rid of since 1991. And, we've talked a lot about people creating these personas to, what's the word? Kind of expand on what they wanted to do. But this seemed to be like a reflection on what people assumed that he was. I think Bono is in this very interesting world of being one of the biggest pop stars and biggest rock stars in the world. And I think people, push a lot of their ideas onto him. And I think he just dove head first into it, saying, if this is who you think I am, I'm just going to be this thing on stage and just deal with it. And, it's very glam and very rock star. I don't know if he's like that as a person. Who knows? I don't know what any of these people are like as people. I don't think they are people anymore. I don't think anybody that's in like rock and roll or that is a famous movie star. I don't think they're real people at this point. I think they're just like these things. And I think you can't get away from it. I think you're just out there like doing things. And I think that as a way to exercise this, he probably acted it out and, kind of leaned into it. And, who knows how much that carries on, but these were definitely personas that he would put out there within the show and then come back to being, I'm Bono and, Irish independence and XYZ and yada, yada. And there you go. And then, it's a way to kind of like express yourself and then come back to being the real you. And you can do that every night. And God, isn't that great?
Mm-hmm. I wonder if as an entertainer, as the venues and audiences grow, do you feel the need to compensate them through a performance that gets larger each time? And I imagine a guy like Bono still recalls the days where they played for nothing, were spit upon, but then now that audiences are paying $150 per ticket, probably thinks, well, I got a mock show. I got to do something.
I think there's definitely, the expectation is there. You want a bigger, better thing. We saw U2 like a couple of years ago. I mean, we are post-COVID times now. We're like, trending post-COVID, and we got a family, one of our people in our family couldn't go see them, and they gave us free tickets, and we're like, sure, we'll go see U2. It's funny. It's not like a band I'd ever go buy tickets to, but if you're given free tickets to go see U2, sure, what the fuck?
Yeah.
And we went out and like, it was fucking great. Their stage show was incredible. It was this huge monolithic thing that just like descended from the roof of like the auditorium that we saw it in, at like the Shrine, or it wasn't even the Shrine. It was like where did the Forum? I was trying to think of where the Lakers used to play. So the Forum is this huge thing. And then they had multiple stages. And of course, like, at some point, there's The Fly, there's MacPheesto, there's these guys that come out, and you're just like, I know that guy from almost 30 fucking years ago. And you're just so excited to see this thing that, like, I'm sure in its heyday was so important. And now it feels like, all right.
Yeah.
I got it, but at least I got to see it in some version of it. But man, do they know how to fucking perform?
I've only seen the fake Bono at Starlight Bowl.
Mono. It's all, you only hear it out of one speaker on the left-hand side. You're like, close enough.
Okay, Manfredi, what do you got for your third?
All right, my third choice. I am going with Ramone's bass player and songwriter Dee Ramone, and his hip hop persona Dee King, making one of the strangest albums ever made.
Yeah.
Basically, the story goes that Dee Ramone was in rehab or the hospital or some sort of facility for his heroin addiction. And while he was in there doing his rehab assignment, he he kind of fell in with this group of fellow fellows who were in there who are all kind of into hip hop and rap. And his first name was Doug. So they gave him the nickname Dougie Fresh and kind of schooled him on kind of what hip hop is all about. And he got done with it and came out and was like, basically, great, I want to make a hip hop album. And Dee Dee Ramone had no background in hip hop, no knowledge of how to make a hip hop record. So in many ways, it is this great kind of naive music, kind of outsider music concept. Is what happens if you take someone who whole life is based on the punkest of punk rock, and you sit them down and have them try to make a hip hop album, and it turns out it's a hot fucking mess. Is what it is.
Spoiler
alert! There, it's the whole album is. It was done at, I can't remember the name of the recording studio, but it was the same recording studio that did like Run DMC and the Beastie Boys and LL Cool J and all of the like 80s New York hip hop acts. And it was the same production crew and everything. But it's this guy doing the rap who sounds like, he's straight out of, Queens, basically. And it's you can tell it's made by somebody who really wants to connect. You can tell that I'm trying to be very like diplomatic about it.
Yeah.
You can tell it's made by someone who has their heart in the right place in terms of like this newfound love for hip hop and has no talent for it whatsoever.
There's a moment in Blondie's what is it? What's the name?
Rapture.
What's the name? Rapture.
Right.
Where you're just like, God bless you. I know you're trying. I know that this is, I know you're trying to feel, I know you're feeling this thing. I know that you've been within this community. I'm sure that you were just like, okay, rap is cool and neat.
Yeah.
Neat. Or I don't know if Blondie would ever use the word neat, but I'm, Debbie Harry. You just like, no, swing and a miss.
Yeah, there was a lot of that happening in the 80s because there was this sort of intersection. I mean, you had a band like The Clash that was able to authentically pull together punk and what was happening with hip hop and make it really amazing. D.D. King was not.
Yeah.
Not Clash. The ambassador and not the person to do it.
Well, and it's interesting. And by the way, you mentioned Blondie. Guess who appears as on a couple of tracks? It's Debbie Harry and Chris Stein. So clearly there was some sort of, they were still partially, mainly it was done as a favor because everyone in the community loved T.D. Ramone and wanted to see him do well. And he had just left the Ramones. So this was like his big solo moment. And the album's called Standing in the Spotlight. And that's kind of what it was, his moment to try and do that. Guys. So they wanted to try and help him out. But obviously there was some sort of also love of hip hop that was being transferred from Blondie to D.D. Ramone.
It does seem like people like Fab Five Freddy who hung out in Blondie's circle, but also hung out in like the Uptown art circle. Like he might be at a party with Andy Warhol or Basquiat,
right?
Or it seemed like there was so much cross current between hip hop and punk. Anybody in punk could recognize that hip hop was this authentic street-based thing that was of the same intent that punk came from. I would also say Dee Dee's persona in interviews is also very much a prototypical rap persona in that he was about self-aggrandization.
Yes.
So and almost like a Trump-esque thing because he wanted people to be on his side and also bemoan those people who did not give him the credit that he deserved all the time. So
I mean,
go ahead.
I was gonna say one of the songs is called "Commotion in the Ocean," and it's about him. It's him rapping about taking surfing lessons from a mermaid, and it's got this like it's got this hip hop meets Dick Dale sort of like vibe to it. It's just very strange.
I love
the whole
that.
thing's
I love that the guy from the B-52s just swims up and he's like, "That's my line." I mean, you look. I've literally never
stay
heard
out of
this.
my business.
Yeah. I'm looking at. I just went to Wikipedia because I've never heard of this album, and I love that it's like musically the songs vary from old school hip hop and doo wop to rock and roll and punk rock. That is a wide swath that you are painting. That you're just all over the place. Just whatever you're trying to accomplish is. I like the guy that green. I approve of whoever is like the producer that was just like, yes, this is what we're doing now. Yes, good job, Dee Dee.
If you go to Dee Dee's website, it's stuck. It looks like an Angel Fire or like GeoCities like website, but and the news, this LP is like the top story here, the vinyl release, but then like the next story is like that he's going to be on Jeopardy, a contestant on Jeopardy,
and he died 20 years ago.
Yeah,
that's how. So it probably is an Angel Fire.
Oh wow!
Because I mean, he died 20 years ago.
Wow.
Oh my goodness.
Well, it's in a new episode 2014. Well, anyway, yeah. Holy smokes, that's a fun choice. It does also like, I when you hear the Beatles. See interviews with especially like Paul, but also John. We talk about in early days when they were being interviewed about rock and roll. They'd often say that people always were interested in asking how long they thought the band would last or rock would last, and for them, they didn't think it was going to last that long at all. I think maybe there was an American film or something like that, or lyrics for that rock and roll is here to stay. I don't think any Beatle ever thought that. And they thought they were going to be, if they were lucky, they could be posing a theme for Shirley Bassey to sing in the next Bond film or something like that, or get onto some other musical genre. And so I can see how these young kids kind of thought, well, we might as well try it because who knows how long this punk thing's going to last. I might as well cut a rap album.
I'm on the ddramone.com website and I'm seeing
I just went to it.
They're selling the Dee Ramone Fender Precision bass, which is great to have a signature model from the bass player who played the most simplistic and basic bass lines in rock history.
At least it's not a jazz P bass or anything.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. There is nothing precision about Dee Ramone. No.
It's so funny. Oh, wow. Maybe just speed. They play a whole show in 25 minutes. That's true. Souped up action on there. Okay, so then it's Michael Winfield for your fourth.
I am so glad that you brought up someone that was kind of a failure, because my last one, even though like maybe economically wasn't much of a failure, but Chris Gaines.
There it is.
There we go. Yeah, there's the one.
As the alternate persona
had to do it. Yeah.
Of Garth Brooks. We had to get it in here as this thing that you just look at the picture of Chris Gaines on the cover of the album Greatest Hits, which is, wow, that is wild. That you put out your first album that you put out as this alternate persona is the Greatest Hits, and you're just like, holy shit, what do you think this is? It went to number 2 though in the US, which is fucking phenomenal, just based on like the idea of like Garth Brooks is this huge persona as a musician, and he's the biggest fucking country music star in the world and was for so many years, but
arguably the biggest star in the world at the time, musically.
And then he's like, all right, my idea is that this is who Chris Gaines is. He's got a soul patch, he's got kind of like eyeliner, he's got dark hair, shaggy hair, kind of looks a little emo, and they're like, okay, and this is the kind of music I'm gonna put out. Okay, guess what? Australian. And you're just like, what the fuck is, you don't have to go that far. Like, I know that, like, the guys from Blur or Damon went to cartoon, but this is just something else.
I had a guy,
Australian,
a good buddy who's a pretty informed country music aficionado, broke it down for me and said, okay, here's the deal. Garth Brooks, what his vanity led him to want to become an actor. And he was going to do this movie about this person, the Lamb. And the Lamb would have featured many different identities. Chris Gaines was one of those identities. So it was this anthology or multi-episodic or something. It would maybe be bizarre if we saw it and we'd wonder what the heck was going on, but we would get it. Oh, he's playing all these different parts within this thing. And these albums were kind of like stories inside stories that once you saw the big picture, you'd kind of get it. It was the Zelig of music. That movie didn't happen. So what was left is this relic that has no footnote to it. You wonder, what the heck is this thing? So
there was a behind the music that was created for Chris Gaines. Wow. That was supposed to be a tie-in with the movie. And then the movie never happened. So they released this sort of behind the music episode that was about the whole like fictional backstory of Chris Gaines and the car accident he'd had that made him become a recluse and the whole thing.
I love the idea of just getting it all out just to make any amount of money back.
Yeah. Don't have to explain. We'll just put it out as product, and it's related to the most profitable person that we have.
It's wild that my main memory of him, I don't think I've heard a single song. I probably heard a song, but I don't know what it is. It doesn't matter what it is because the image of what it is more important than what it is. When Garth Brooks was the host of SNL and Chris Gaines was the musical guest.
Yeah.
And you're just sitting there and you're just like, oh my God, just constant like jerk off motion. Like, who gives a like what? Who are we trying to impress here? What is this thing that who is this like this fake ass thing that we're trying to do? And then, but they just still did it. And then as you said, the movie never came out.
Well, here's the weird thing. We remember it as a total bust, right? Like this total like disaster. It went to number 2 in the US. The album did. It was 2 times platinum. The lead single Lost in You reached number 5 on the singles chart, which is, I believe, the highest ranking single he ever had in the Hot 100 chart, the overall pop chart. So even though we want to consider this to be this great failure, that's how popular Garth Brooks was. Even his failures were successful.
Well, what I like about this too, just looking at the Wikipedia page, comparing it to the D.D. King page, the D.D. King album was like 26 minutes long. The Garth Brooks album is 56 minutes long. That is at least twice as much, or almost, that you're just like, he is so convinced of his content that he's just going to put out this 13 song album that lasts almost an hour. And you're just like, okay, it wasn't something you just cut off at the pass. Like the second Strokes album was like 34 minutes. And you're just like, yeah, that was when the Strokes were the fucking hottest thing in the fucking world. And they're just like, yeah, half an hour's fine.
Yeah.
We're good. We got it. And he's like, you know what? I got almost 60 minutes full of Chris Gaines for you right now. It makes me wonder what like the other what the other personalities were. Did he have a cartoon character in there? Did he have like a rapper? Oh my God, did he have a rapper? Oh. Did he have like, what were the other characters from The Lamb that he wanted to do?
Yeah.
He just has like on like, big reel-to-reel album somewhere that he just has it all recorded. This nonsense.
Let me ask you this question. Do we think that if Garth Brooks would have said, hey, I want to make a pop album, and he had released the album instead of being, A Life of Chris Gaines, it would have been, a Garth Brooks solo album that just happened to be a pop album, would it have been treated with the same derision, or would we have considered it to be a better album?
I think that is so hard to say, because I think it would have just been the Garth Brooks album that wasn't for the Garth Brooks fan, and then he would have just gone back and there would have been 1 or 2 songs that would have kind of appeared in his set list going forward when he performed live, when he was still performing, and just like, all right, that was the one that we like. It's like, I love The Cure, but every once in a while you hear a song that's like, okay, that was one from one of their newer ones. You're just like, that should be the 8th song in their set list, and then you just go back to the things that you want to hear.
Yeah.
I do appreciate the fact that in March, and reading the Wikipedia here, in March of this year, Garth Brooks announced that the album was going to be re-released on multiple platforms, including previously unreleased songs.
Oh, great.
He won't let the fucking thing go.
That's a commitment to a bit.
My dude, they're not making the movie. I don't know how else to tell you. I don't know how many times you put this out. They're not making it.
I would have loved if the rest of the other like faux personas were also put out albums, and they were also called greatest hits.
Yeah.
That would have been the best if he had like, like a Piss James or whoever it is that were also just greatest hits. God, that would have been incredible.
Veronique. Oh, she's a torch singer.
Oh my God, who is his like transgender character that he has in his pocket somewhere?
Not that this is any relation to a transgender character. He was on SNL, one of the funnier hosts in a game show, Ask an Old French Whore or something like that. Like he was an old French whore.
Oh, he is also the star, or the co-star of probably my favorite SNL sketch, which is the one where the devil can't write a love song, where Will Ferrell comes in. He's like sitting there and he's trying to figure out how to write a song, and then he like, I'd sell my soul to the devil to write a great song, and then Will Ferrell comes in dressed as the devil, looking like something out of I forget what movie that is that has Tom Cruise.
Legend. Yeah.
Legend. Yeah. Basically it's like Will Ferrell dressed up as like the devil. It's like in that character, but he has like a guitar and like he's dressed to the nines as a rock star, and he comes in, he's like, how about this? And like he just plays like really shitty songs, and he's like, I don't think so. It's like, what about this tasty lick? He's like, he just writes a bunch of terrible songs. It's so incredible. It is literally my favorite SNL sketch. It's like, all right, Garth Brooks is perfect in it.
That's funny. Rich
has got one more.
All right.
I got one more. And I'm actually doing a bit of an audible on this one because I just remembered this album and I'm fascinated by it. It's called The Turtles Present the Battle of the Bands.
Oh, I listened to that like last year. That's awesome.
Yeah, so basically everyone knows the Turtles, Happy Together. The couple of years after that song came out, they decided to release an album that was called The Turtles Present the Battle of the Bands, and it was a concept album. And the concept was that the Turtles were hosting this battle of the bands. And then there were all of these different bands that played different genres of music that would do one song as part of the Battle of the Bands competition. And in fact, it was the Turtles taking on a different persona for each song that was in a different genre. So there was a Hawaiian song called I'm Chief Kamanawanalea, We're the Royal Macadamia Nuts by Chief Kamanawanalea and his Royal Macadamia Nuts. There was a surf song called Surfer Dan that was attributed to the Crossfires, which was a bit of inside baseball because the Crossfires was actually the name of the Turtles when they were a surf band before they became the Turtles. It actually had their last really big hit song called Eleanor.
Yeah.
On it, which was attributed to Howie, Mark, Johnny, Jim, and Al, which is just the name of the guys who were in the Turtles. And they even had a song that was written by Jim McGuinn and Gene Clark of the Turtles of the Birds.
Oh.
Yeah, called You Showed Me, played by a band called the Nature's Children. And I've just always been, I had actually remembered at one point thinking, wouldn't that be a great concept for an album? Just to do, I remember thinking about this when I was doing music more seriously. That wouldn't it be fun just to do a different track as a different genre and attribute it to a different artist, not knowing that the Turtles had done this 35, 40 years before.
Yeah.
It was not a big hit in terms of the album. The album kind of stiffed, although Eleanor and You Showed Me both reached number 6 on the Billboard pop charts. So it's fascinating, this idea that the concept bombed, but there were songs within that concept that did really well, and those are the ones that sounded the most Turtle-like.
Mm-hmm. I think, I don't know, it was Mark Woolman or whoever the Turtles, Howard Kalin said the record company wanted another Happy Together, and Eleanor was just
they did it under protest.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Basically,
his eye roll, like, what do you want? Something like this, and I love you, and you're my pride and joy, and say I love you, like.
Right.
Yes, that's what we want.
That's exactly what we want, and thank you for giving us this.
Yeah, it's a huge hit. But Flo and Eddie, the Mark and Howard, also of the Turtles, also, like, in a way, were kind of a battle of the bands themselves as backup singers on many, many albums. Sang backup on T-Rex, Steely Dan, Ray Manzarek, Alice Cooper, Bruce Springsteen, Duran Duran. Like, wow, that's some versatility right there.
Yeah.
I also remember hearing.
I immediately added this album to my like next up to play in like my iMusic or whatever it's called now.
It's, well, you know, it's got a sense of humor to it, and some of the songs are, I think, are goofier than they are good, and some are better than they are funny in it. But it also reminded me of, like, oh, this was also an album that took advantage, like De La Soul used to do, of the in between the tracks, some little comedy and bits and riffs, and keeping, if 3 Feet High and Rising had a kind of a game show through line, this has that Battle of the Bands through line through it. That's kind of funny.
And by the way, Chief I Come On Wanalea was actually sampled by De La Soul.
Oh, was it really?
So
wow.
It all comes around.
It all comes around. All right. Well, thank you for all of those who have hung out with us through this episode. Interested in hearing if you have any suggestions when you hear this episode. Go ahead and post on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter. What do you think might be your favorite alternative persona act from somebody who was already an act? But let's go with Damon Albarn and Gorillaz because y'all both believe in it so hard. D.D. King was pretty damn funny. We had some fun owning on that fool, although the guy was pretty awesome and lovable. And after Johnny, I think the most Ramone looking of the Ramones. Like, okay, after Joey and John. Okay, after Marky and Joey. Yeah, okay. And just because he set himself up so high to be toppled down, and he's doubling down on it. Chris Gaines. And let's go with Turtles present the Battle of the Bands. That was a lot of fun.
Good choice, Rich.
I hope you guys agree. I hate to judge my friends. No, I love to judge.
What are we talking about?
Say, what are you going to do for 6 years now?
All right, this has been the Mount Rushmore of musical artists and their alternate personas. As always, I'm Jeff.
I'm Richard.
Yeah, I'm Michael.